And now on WRS, Michael McKay with the McKay Interview.
Hello everyone. In this mini-series, I'm trying to bring you different perspectives on the various effects of COVID-19 and this pandemic, not only in Switzerland, but internationally. One crucially important area is the media and communication. Now, whatever your language is, your mother tongue, and no matter how many languages you are gifted enough to speak, you must be aware of the discussion in a variety of media and different countries about the way this public health pandemic and economic crisis have been reported, and the manner in which different political leaders and their health and science officials have communicated, and I should add, been understood. My guest today is Pierre Ruetschi, who has many years of experience in the field of journalism, especially in international Geneva, where for many years he was the editor-in-chief of Geneva's own newspaper, the Tribune de Genève. Nowadays, he's the director of the Geneva Press Club and still writes for various journals and appears regularly on radio and television. As events can change quite quickly, I mentioned that this interview is being recorded on the 14th of May 2020 via Zoom. Switzerland and some other countries too have already started to open up slowly after the lockdown, and we all watch to see how things will develop. Hello, Pierre. Welcome again to the McKay Interview. It's hard to imagine that it's 7 years since you were last on my show, and despite having to speak over Zoom and not being able to meet face-to-face, it's good to see you and talk to you again.
Hello, Michael. Good to see you again, even if it's only online.
We have to make do with what we have these days. Pierre, I have a variety of questions to ask you about the media and communication in times of crisis like the one we're in now. Here's my first question. When a public health crisis is unfolding in real time, is it the job of editors and journalists to support the strategy of the government, I mean politicians, who in general are trying to do their best in a rapidly changing situation, or is journalists' time better spent in examining and researching the policies and actions which government present to its citizens? Or put another way, Pierre, what is the role of the press and the media in general in times of national anxiety like the public health crisis that we're experiencing at present with COVID-19?
Yeah, this is a lot of very interesting questions. So I think the first role of the journalists in this time is to do their job with absolute seriousness and with a sense of responsibility that is even more important than usual. You can't fail in these cases, because if you fail, if you don't do your job, or if you misinform the public, can be a question of life and death. So I think the media had in this crisis and still have a very, very strong responsibility, just informing and giving very high quality information, because the fight against the COVID-19 is really a fight of information. I mean, as you have seen, during this crisis, the main measures that had to be taken were measures that the public had to take. Social distance, wash hands, etc., etc. So you're fully in the middle of the mission of a media. Bring the right message to the people so that they have the right behavior, so that you can struggle with efficiency against COVID-19. Now, so this is really the first goal, I guess. And the other thing is, media are, let's say, pretty well known to be and to push up controversy. This is a thing that in this case, you won't make controversy for controversy, because the things were too serious just to have a debate where you can say things, because things have a more deeper effect, I guess, than in usual days. But at the same time, you are not supposed just to be a kind of loudspeaker of the government's message. You have to analyze the message, to evaluate it, and you can also give your opinions. Now, this was very less true in the very start of the crisis, because you had to follow certain rules. But even then, if medias didn't agree or thought there were facts that were not followed, or things that were not coherent and or were contradictory in the way the government was informing, media must tell it, must say it, that's their role too. So, and this comes to the fact, were we in war or not? You know that President Macron repeated 7-8 times in his first speech, we are at war. Actually, we are not really at war, because if we were at war, certain rules would also should also be followed by the media, and you can say what you want. We were not at war because we as media could still be critical, say, put in context facts, and disagree if we wanted to. In a wartime, there are special rules that you have to follow, and we were not in that time. So, I mean, very interesting to, you have to, not to go against the government just playing controversy, but you have to stay critical, you have to be humble also in treating the news. That's very important, and that's a thing that media usually doesn't really do.
That's also been the case in the United Kingdom with some of the media in the United Kingdom, and some politicians too have been using this language of war and Churchill and all that sort of stuff, and it's had a mixed reception from some people. But just following on a little bit more from that question, Pierre, in the context of the present pandemic and crisis, is it true to say, as one of if it's true to say, there's one of my previous guests, Dr. Bob Bishop, on this program, that science is not dogma, science is not absolute. Can't the same be said about the truth that is sought by media when reporting on crises such as the one we're all going through at present? I mean, even the Secretary General of the United Nations in a recent speech listed and included journalists in his list of those who've been targeted as in hate speech since the outbreak of COVID-19. I mean, what's your view on journalists in that respect being seen to be in the hotline, in the heat of the fire, so to speak?
I think that the goal of journalists and the aim of this profession is still to find the truth, to get as close as possible to the truth. Now, it's interesting that in this crisis, we have seen that truth is always very relative, as is especially scientific truth, because before of this crisis, I think that much more people than today thought scientific evidence is made of facts. You can't go against it. There is just one fact. You can't say, no, it's not, there is no other reality. And we have seen that actually in this COVID-19 story, the facts evolved, the knowledge evolved. So the truth on day 1 was not the same than the truth on day 20.
And still developing.
Yeah, right. So this is right also for journalism. I mean, we go as near to as possible to the truth, but being able to say this is the absolute and general truth is something that's very difficult to tell. But we have to go after the truth. And now, if I understand that there were different comments on the social networks going after the journalists because they are considered as not good citizens because they put in question the government speech and they look for a truth where the truth is already established. I think these comments are baseless comments. I mean, this is still the role of journalism. I mean, if in China some citizen journalists wouldn't have done their job of questioning what's going on there, perhaps things would have taken even more time to come out. So right. It is very important to do that job. Now, let's be clear. I mean, frankly, I don't really take, I don't take for very serious and very useful, and I don't pay much attention to these comments on the social networks. You will have on one side these people who are hating anyway the journalists and go after them. On the other side, you will have people who say, journalists, you are not enough critical, you should be more critical. And so, okay, this is part of democracy and freedom of speech. Everybody can tell what he wants. Now, let's be clear. Let's try in questions of information, and that was the case during this crisis. People were watching closely the media that were professional media, that were verifying their sources, etc. And even if they were very active on social network, the news that came out of social networks were not very much followed by the people who really needed strong news and strong news to understand what was going on. And if you look what happened, the audience of the traditional media went up in a spectacular way, and even public TV was watched by the young generation. Usually they haven't done it for a long time.
We're going to come back to that a bit more before we close. My guest today is Pierre Ruetschi, president of the Geneva Press Club and former editor-in-chief of the Tribune de Genève. Pierre, listen, most of the people listening to us now will never, ever have been in the hot seat that you sat in as editor of an important newspaper. So here's a personal, professional question. If an important news story were passed to you in confidence, let's call it a scoop, or even a leak, and it conflicts with what you've been told or heard from the public health authorities, even though in your opinion the story is in the public interest, how would you handle it? I mean, would you publish? And just explain in the short time we've got the thought process you go through as an editor-in-chief when that thing comes onto your desk.
Listen, I would do actually exactly the same I was doing for years. I mean, if you get an information that is of public interest, you first have to verify it.
Yeah.
That's the point number one. You verify it, you take all the precautions to see that, to prove that your information is serious, is good, is of public interest. You check, and double check. And once this is done and the information, you are sure that the information is clean and is good sourced and is real and is a true information, you publish. Because, there is no reason to hide reality, to hide the truth. You have to handle that. And I think it's a fair play. So that's what I would do now.
Okay, thanks.
The only time when you, for example, have to quote a source, a hidden source in our job, is when there is somebody that is life threatened. If, let's say, this news would put in jeopardy tens of lives, then you will think again. But if it's not the case, you publish.
Let's finish up with some questions about Switzerland. In your experience, are there special characteristics of the Swiss media and the Swiss reading and listening public, given the languages of German, French, Italian, and not forgetting English, in which the media communicate? What are those characteristics, and what are the differences between the various linguistic groups, if in fact their differences exist at all? And related to this question, Pierre, please could you give me an overview of what the main language newspapers in Switzerland have been saying about this crisis?
Yeah, very interesting question. As you know, there is a Röstigraben, as we say. That means there is usually a difference of thinking, of way of handling stuff between the French-speaking people or Latin-speaking people, with the Italian ones, and the Swiss Germans. And this happened again, and this was pretty clear in this case. Why? Because COVID-19 first had a very powerful effect in Tessin, in the Italian part. And then it had a very strong effect in Geneva. Geneva was the place where we had the most cases in proportionally to the population in all Switzerland. Yeah. And the Canton de Vaud was the place where we had the most cases in absolute value. So, and Tessin was the first cases were in Tessin. So we we were really on the front line of this crisis.
When you say
That
we,
means
being the Latin
we in
language,
the Latin
yes,
side
the Latin
of
part.
Switzerland.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
And so we were also the cantons of Vaud, Geneva, Tessin, were also the first to ask for very strict measures, for confinement measures, to stop the workplaces everywhere, etc. And in the German part of Switzerland, they were much more cautious. There were some cantons where even 10, 15 days later, there was still not one case. So they were thinking, what's going on? We can't stop economy. And we could see that split in the way the people were affected by the disease, and also in the way the governments of these local cantons reacted to that. And at the same time, you could see that German part was much more close to Germany, where they were more efficient and very quick in responding to Germany, and they could deconfine early. So the Swiss Germans wanted to deconfine early, and we were closer to France, where, as you know, confinement was very, very strict. They were quick, pretty quick, let's say, and they are now a little bit slower to deconfine than Germany also. So Switzerland was pretty split in this case, but even though it's not a real national problem, because this belongs to the way Switzerland is handling in different ways, in different with different speed the situation.
Last question, Pierre. So I'm sorry, the clock is ticking against me here, but last question is mainly Swiss, but also maybe a little bit bigger than just Switzerland. Has, in your view, the COVID-19 crisis left the media in better or worse shape than when it began?
Both. That's the paradoxical thing. The medias had never so much audience that they had today. I mean, that shows that they are necessary, that people want them to do their job, and they are listening to them, and they are following them very, very intensely. On the other side, medias have never been weaker. Why? Because advertisement just crumbled down. I mean, they lost in April. Many medias lost from 50 to 90% of advertisement. It's huge.
Huge.
And they were already in a crisis in Switzerland, as in the rest of the world. So the COVID-19 accelerated the crisis of media and put the citizens and also the governments in front of a choice. Can we just let them sink and disappear, or should we help them? There was a process on the way to help the media. COVID-19 accelerated it. The parliament decided 10 days ago to take urgent measures to help media with about 60 million, a plan of 60 million francs. And at the same time, the government submitted to the parliament a long-term media help that will be discussed in Parliament in the summer month, at least before the end of the year, and that will really help the media to go through this very difficult times and try to rebuild themselves. And this really made a difference with COVID, is that media in general really gained credibility, which was more and more lacking. So it's a change for the good, and also for the bad, because they are weaker than ever. But I think globally, what will happen is that in a way or another, media will come out of this crisis with a new potential to exist, to make news, to be followed, and they have also to take their chance now.
Okay, so to use an expression from your business, Pierre, this story will run and run. Thanks for your insights and for answering all my questions, Pierre. My guest today has been Pierre Ruetschi, President of the Geneva Press Club and former Editor-in-Chief of the Tribune de Genève. Pierre, thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Michael.
That was the McKay interview with Michael McKay. And don't forget, you can hear that interview again on our website, worldradio.ch.